is Libe Chonya from the Open University of Tanzania. I belong to the Department of Journalism and Media Studies, and I'm here today to present to you on media ethics. That's an introduction. So we're going to find the definition of ethics and how does ethics apply to the day-to-day journalistic endeavors. Now, before I start, it's important that we know that this is just an introduction, and this media ethics in this university is actually codified under OJO or OMC 123, and we have different knowledge areas, and I'm going to take you through knowledge area 1, and that is media ethics. Now, as a part of introduction, it is true that without a doubt, journalism plays a very important role in our lives. It plays a very important role in a day-to-day, environment in our society. And sometimes it's even difficult to imagine what societies would be without this profession of journalism that deals with the task of providing information, because we all know that journalism is there to inform, to persuade, to make analysis of events, of different events that have happened, but how do we make analysis of these events? And, promotion of positive values and culture, etc., etc. So we understand that journalism as a profession actually plays a very vital role in our community. Now, with such important roles of journalism comes another concept of responsibility. You cannot practice journalism without being responsible to the citizens with whom you're working for. In this case now, journalism, to be credible and effective in playing its roles in the society, there must be a professional integrity. You cannot run any field in the world without professionalism. So in this case, therefore, it's because of this reason that communication scholars for decades, authors, media practitioners, they saw an importance of just sitting down and come up with journalism ethics. Now, this lecture is therefore designed to address important ethical questions, as well as practical issues that journalists face in the day-to-day activities. Now, in this case now, it raises questions such as, what is ethics? How do we know what is right and what is wrong? Why should we be ethical, for that matter? And what are the factors that influences our decision-making? What are the factors that influence our ethical behaviors? So this is what we're going to look at. So when we proceed with this lecture, you find that when you talk about media ethics, we are basically referring to moral principles that guide the conduct of journalism practitioners. Basically talking or referring to moral principles. So in the course of this lecture, we shall come about the concepts of morality, moral principles, rules of behavior, etc., etc. Now, since journalism is an important occupation, as I said before, that informs, persuades, educates, entertains, and for this matter, entertains heterogeneous members of society, it has to have a board of ethics that guides the conduct of its practitioners. We are saying that journalism, as an important occupation, as it informs, it persuades, educates, and in this case, heterogeneous, which means diverse group of society, people with different characteristics in the society, heterogeneous members or audience. So in this case now, there must be a board of ethics that guides these media practitioners on how to cover their news, on how to handle news coverage in an ethical manner. So this board of ethics that has been formulated has to guide practitioners, or journalists for that matter, media practitioners, in ensuring that, among other things, the society is reliably, promptly, and objectively informed. For example, we're saying that we have news, fine, as a commodity, but now we want to ensure, how do you inform the society? How reliable is your information? How promptly do you deliver your message to the audience? The fastness, how timely you deliver the message to the audience, and how objective is the content that you are about to deliver to the audience. So these are the important things that we have to consider when we talk about ethics, so that you don't harm others. So in this case now, ethics is an interesting subject. And why interesting is because it deals directly with humanity. We are talking of humanity. In this case, it scrutinizes our human behavior and relations. So there must be an aspect of humanity in ethics. And if we go further, we find that ethics deals with the questions of what is good and what is bad. We are talking about what is appropriate and what is not appropriate. So, which means that we have to distinguish between the two. So when we deal with this question, you have to ask yourself whether this action, this course of action, whether I'm going to do, if I'm going to cover a particular news angle, is it good for the audience? Is it bad? You have to ask yourself as a journalist. The action that I'm about to do or to conduct, is it appropriate or inappropriate? So these are the questions that you have to ask yourself as a moral agent or as a journalist for this matter. So I'm saying that in ethics now, it's all about morality. And this is the terminology that we will come across all the time when we discuss about, as we go along discussing about ethics. Personal convictions, your moral desires, before you do something. What's your natural reaction about something? What's your natural reaction before covering that aspect of news? And societal values. Now, just recall from the time you were young, as a toddler perhaps, your parents had already started inculcating in you some values and etiquettes. And you find that the process continued until when you're going to school. You have to, for example, you have continued to be a permanent student of ethics, sometimes in a way that perhaps you don't realize today. For example, you remember our parents during those days. They inculcated some values in us. Don't do this, do this. Don't tell lie. Don't offend others, etc., etc. So in a way, that was part of ethics that parents or guardians were inculcating in us. And you find that by the time you completed your school, or by the time you completed your university degree, etc., etc., and now you are going to work for a certain company or organization, you find that in the course of working that organization, in a way, you are practicing ethics. If you are told by parents not to lie or not to steal, automatically when you report for a work for the first time, you're not going to lie. You're not going to tell a lie, you're not going to offend others, etc., etc. So you find that in a way, you are practicing ethics without realizing that you're doing so. Now, every day in your life, you're confronted with myriad of situations that are rather complex when you try to analyze in an ethical way. And when you're confronted with this myriad of situations, sometimes complex, so you find that this is where your conscience now calls you to make decisions that are right or wrong. So many issues in a society today that you're confronted with. Now, as a journalist, for example, in this context of media, how does your conscience, cause you to react? What would be your natural reaction towards something before you even decide to conduct that particular action? Now, for example, refer to the ghost workers scandal in the fifth phase government in Tanzania, when the fifth phase under the President John Magufuli in Tanzania came into power. You find that the ghost worker scandal in most of the organizations in Tanzania, people were working, you find the CEO in a certain organization having a number of employees who are employed in that organization. But at the same time, we have ghost workers who are non-existing in that company. And here is the CEO who's taking advantage of the non-existing workers to receive their salaries, getting loans from the bank, using those ghost workers who are non-existing in the list, etc., etc. Now, the act itself is unethical. Now, here comes the President, Magufuli. I'm just taking this as an example. And, in a way, come up and try to detect that ethical vice and decides, to make a different way altogether. And he sacks, the CEO, etc., etc. Now, for this case now, you find that, in this case, the president now stands out to be unethical. It stands out to be ethical. Or take an example of a regional medical officer, who decides to procure, fake medicine that could cost hundreds of thousands of lives. Why? Because he wants to get money. He does that for his personal gain. Now, is the practice self-ethical? Does he or she realizes the serious ethical transgressions committed? So these are the issues that you have to ask yourself. The regional medical officer kills thousands of people just for his personal gain. That is not ethical. Now, let's take an example from the media fraternity that we're talking about. Here's an investigative reporter who decides to kill a story, or sensitive story for this matter. Take an example of a non-alcoholic beverage company whose products have been detected with toxic substances, and the products have been expired, But now this person is told, this journalist is told not to write the story just because he or she has been bribed with 100 million shillings. Now, it's upon that journalist whether to cover the story or receive 100 million shillings. Now, ask yourself whether the act is ethical. As a journalist, are you going to cover the story? Or you're going to receive 100 million shillings and decide to kill the story just for your personal gain at the expense of the majority citizens whom you're working for? Is the act ethical? As a journalist, is the practice ethical? This is the question that you have to ask yourself. It could be that the media house that you're working for does not pay you well. Fine. But that could not be the justification for you to receive 100 million shillings at the expense of the lives of innocent, citizens who are suffering just because of your personal gain. So that's not ethical. Is the reason justify unethical conduct just because you're not well paid in your organization or rather? So refer to a recent act by the renowned celebrity in Tanzania, dishing out and throwing out money to journalists who were in a press conference. You find that journalists now started scrambling for money and abandoned the working tools for a while. Now, was the act done by journalists themselves, let alone exposing their shame? Was it ethical? So you as a journalist, you have to think twice. Here's the person in the press conference, addressing, a panel of journalists, for example, and, in a way, starts to throw money anyhow to journalists. And instead of sticking to your professionalism, you start to abandon the working tools and scrambling for money. That act is not ethical. So these are the issues. And I'm trying to describe these issues in the simplest form, or using these simple examples so that you understand what ethics, the basics or the tenets of ethics, that we should start from the family level, from the ground level, until when we move higher and higher, especially when we pursue our professional career. Now, referring to that example of dishing out money in the press conference, at least one of the journalists was driven by his individual conscience, as he immediately detected the ethical transgression his fellow colleagues were committing. And he decided to yell out against the act. Hey, don't do this. This is unethical. We remember the clip that surfaced the social media. Now, at the end of this lecture, therefore, after having said so, we expect students to define ethics in their own words, to explain the importance of ethics in the society. Now, consider a situation in which you're buying groceries at a nearby shop, and imagine that you'd given the shopkeeper a note worth 2,000 shillings to buy groceries worth 1,500. Then the shopkeeper hands you the groceries for 105,000, as you requested, as well as change worth 8,500, thinking that you'd given him 10,000. Now, how are you going to react to this? As a customer, for example, are you going to return the 8,500 shillings to him and explain that the shopkeeper has been mistaken? Or you're going to hide 8,500 and decide to disappear or run away? What's going to be your natural reaction? I'm just giving you simple examples so that you understand what ethics is. What factors are going to influence your decisions in that situation? Well, let me give another example. Just consider a situation in which you're walking back home, and along the way, you find a person who is groaning in pain in the roadside, crying for help. Now, just as a mere citizen, not necessarily a journalist, what are you going to do? What's going to be your natural reaction? Are you going to pass by the sick person and go away since it's none of your business? Or you're going to turn to him to offer help? Or are you going to call for help for nearby citizens? What are you going to do? Are you going to inform the police? So what are the factors that will influence your decisions in such a situation where you find somebody is just lying there seeking for help? Or just consider another situation in which you're doing the examination in the Open University of Tanzania. Now, you see a student sitting in front of you reading answers from unauthorized papers or unauthorized material. What are you going to do as a student, for example? Are you going to ignore him just because it's none of your business? Or let the student continue cheating and then you're going to warn him later in a day? Or you're going to threaten him, or you're going to report him to the authorities if he or she does not share the answers with you? Or you're going to report the cheating student right away to the invigilator? So these are just simple questions that you have to ask yourself, and this is where ethics actually comes from. It emanates from the very humble background until when you move further to the highest authorities. Let me give another example. Consider, let's see another thing that you have to consider the do and don'ts that have been inculcated in you since when you were in a childhood. Remember the way you were told to greet elders, for example, that avoid the company of bad boys and girls, make sure you return home early, don't tell an lie, don't use abusive language, never steal, etc., etc. So, what do these do and don'ts mean to you today as a journalist? Now, we take a context or a media context that what do these do and don'ts mean to you today as a media practitioner? So, we are asking these questions from the very humble background. These are questions, these are situations that we're confronted with in our society in a day-to-day lives. So, let's engage our students now in a class activity class. Now, take a bit of your time and think about all the do's and don'ts in your community. And list down at least 10 of them. They can be taboos, customs, traditions, rules, etiquettes, and the like. Now, try to see in which way these relate to the definitions of ethics that we've discussed in this lecture. After having said so, now let's move a bit further to explore some definitions of ethics that have been advanced by various communication scholars. Before we go into these, scholars, etc., now it's important that we start defining ethics in the media context. Actual ethics are rules of behavior or moral principles that guide our actions in a given situation. So when somebody tells you what is ethics, we shall come about key terminologies, one of them being rules of behavior or moral principles that guide our actions in a given situation. And when we talk about ethics, actually, before we go into these definitions, we find that it's been derived from the Greek word that is ethos, which means customs, traditions, and character that guide a particular group of people, or it guides a particular culture, organization, etc., etc. So we are talking about rules of behavior and moral principles that guide our actions. Now, we shall go further even exploring what ethics is. For example, we are talking of application of rational thoughts. That when we talk about ethics, we are specifically referring to the application of rational thoughts by media practitioners, especially when they're deciding between the two competing moral choices. So here we have the two competing moral choices. Now, if we have the two competing moral choices, that sometimes you find no alternative best answer, or it becomes difficult for you to decide which ethical way to pursue. This is where now the application of rational thought by media practitioners chips in. For example, it's not against the law to publish the name of a rape victim, but is it ethical? It's not illegal to stick to a microphone to a crying father whose son is lying on a pool of blood following an accident. And then you, as a journalist, you take a microphone and sticking to the crying father's face. It's not illegal. But ask yourself, is the act ethical? Therefore, application of ethics almost involves the most morally defensible answer to a problem that has got no single solution or answer. or the best answer for that matter. For example, if you refer to that grieving father, the reporter's job is to get the story about. Fine, this is very well. And the public has the right to know. Fine. And the man's sorrow or bitterness is part of that story. We all understand that. Well, good. But now, remember, that man has the right to privacy. He or she deserves the right to be respected, and she deserves the right for his or her dignity. Now, as a journalist for this matter, you know, the one who decides, because you as a journalist, you are the one who is going to decide the best ethical way to pursue. Now, in this case now, as a journalist, you have to ask yourself whether to continue interviewing that man who is crying, you know, in front of his son who is dead, lying in a pool of blood. It's upon you now as a journalist to continue interviewing that person at that moment, or leave that grief-stricken man in peace and not pieces. So the person who is making these decisions is called a moral agent. You as a journalist, you are the moral agent deciding now, you know, what to do, deciding what is bad, what is good. And you're being guided by your individual conscience. If you're confronted in that situation, which is rather complex, you have two competing moral choices. It's upon to you now to use your moral conscience, your individual conscience, as a moral agent to decide which way to go, so that you don't compromise with ethics. Now, let us see different definitions for ethics by different authors. Here we have Louis A. Day, who says ethics as the branch of philosophy that deals with the moral component of human life, reflecting a society's notions about the rightness or wrongness of an act and the distinctions between the virtue and vice. In this case, when we talk of virtue, we're talking about the good side of things, while the vice, we are talking about the evil side. So, according to Lewis, ethics is a branch of philosophy that deals with moral components. So, we find that when we talk of ethics, as we go along discussing, as we go along, you know, looking at the various definitions, we find that the keywords are the moral component, rules of behavior, you know, humanity, etc., etc. So, according to him, he says, branch of philosophy that deals with the moral component, morality, moral component of human life, because we are humans, moral agents, exercising these ethics, reflecting society's notion about the rightness or wrongness, because it's the same society which decides which is good and which is bad. They are the ones who determine what to do and what not to do. And you as a journalist, you belong to that particular society. So there are virtues, there are vices. So it's upon you as a moral agent now to decide which one is good, which is appropriate, and which one is not appropriate. So this is Louis Day in 1991 defined ethics in that way. And he further argues that ethics involves the evaluation and application of those moral values, which means now, as a journalist for this context, you have to evaluate your deeds. Application of those moral values that a society or culture has accepted as its norms. So it therefore believes that ethics are there to guide societies and not individuals. So ethics is the science, in other words, of rightness or wrongness of a conduct. So you find that as we go along, the rightness and wrongness comes through. So conduct is purposive action which involves choice and will. Because there's a conduct, it's upon you now. It's a choice whether to continue interviewing that person. It's upon your will to continue interviewing that person or just leave him in peace, depending on a situation, on a particular situation in a certain environment. So it is the expression of character. It's an expression of character which is a settled habit of the will. So the will is the self in action. Therefore, ethics is the science of human character. Moral agent, in other words, as expressed in the right or wrong of a conduct or an act. But rightness or wrongness refers to the good, which is the ideal of human life. So we are talking of the rightness or wrongness. And when we refer to rightness or wrongness, we are talking of the good, which is the ideal to human life, something which is good. So ethics, therefore, is the science of the highest good. Something as a journalist that you have to perform so that not to harm others. Something that is justifiable in the society. And that's the science of morality. So therefore, ethics is concerned with the evaluation of conduct with reference to an ideal, something good in society. So it seeks to determine the supreme ideal involved in a human conduct. Supreme ideal, something which is good. So you as a moral agent, you as a media practitioner, if you're confronted with two competing moral choices, you have to decide now which way is rather ethical and which one is to abandon. That's why we're saying it seeks to determine the supreme ideal, something good which is involved in a human conduct. And this conduct is being done by you as a journalist. Now, it seeks to teach us how we can pass correct judgments upon human conduct, because you're the one to pass a judgment. Consider it as a right or wrong with reference to the supreme ideal of human life. So according to Sinha 2009, ethics is the science of the ideal involved in human life. We're talking about ideal, something good, something that does not harm others. Therefore, ethics often involve the balancing of competing rights when there is no correct answer. A case in point, a student who promises to remain silent when a classmate confides that he has cheated. Just to take an example, because we want to see the balancing competing rights, two competing moral choices. Now here's an example where a student promises to remain silent to his friend who is a classmate who confides that he has cheated in an exam or something, or in a certain exercise, a class exercise. Now if a teacher attempts to solicit a testimony from that student regarding her friend's nefarious behavior, the student must then weigh the value of loyalty to the friends, which is a moral virtue, against commitment to the truth, which is another moral virtue, according to Day 2006. Now here is a teacher asking that, a friend to that cheating student, can you tell me whether your friend was cheating? Now you as a friend, you're confronted with two competing moral choices. One, you have to be loyal to your friend. That's a moral virtue. But on the other side, remember that you have to tell the truth. Now, truth is another commitment, is another moral virtue. So which means that you're confronted with two different moral virtues. Now it's upon you to decide which one is to pursue at that moment in time. So that's what I'm saying. Ethics involves, two or more than two competing moral choices. So which means you have to decide which one is the best. For example, most of us have been told that stealing is wrong. And we've been also told that human lives are highly valued. Fine. What if a loved one requires medication to live, and we have no money to buy such medications, and that we are compelled to go and steal the medication from a certain pharmacy. Now, ask yourself, is the act morally justified? Does the value of human life outweigh the harm done by stealing the medicine? Or is stealing always wrong, regardless of the motive? So these are the questions that you have to ask yourself. Should I steal the medicine to save the life of that person? What should I do? So you're confronted with two competing moral choices. I have to steal so that to save the life of that person, but at the same time stealing is wrong. So is the act justified? So therefore, it's obvious that ethics is a set of values or principles and standards guiding an individual, and in this context a journalist, a group of professionals' conduct or actions, especially when confronted with two or more compelling situations as I have described above. Now, let's see another definition from Gordon et al. 1996, who sees media ethics as concerning right and wrong, good and bad, better and worse actions taken by people working for the media. So we find that we come across the same terminologies, good and bad, right, wrong, better, worse, etc., etc. So we find that Gordon further argues that the ethical concern is important because it forces media practitioners to make commitments and thoughtful decisions among alternatives. So we find that media practitioners this way are confronted with different alternatives, competing moral choices. So it's upon them as moral agents to decide which way, which decisions to pass so that not to harm others and to be ethical, justified. Here we have the minister, one of the ministers in Tanzania, Dr. Makebe, and the late Mvungi, who were quoted in Rioba document 1998, who argued that journalism ethics deal with the ideal behavior, something good, with what journalists ought to do in order to be moral individuals and professionals. Which means now, in this context, if you want to be a journalist, you have to be morally good. You have to practice your profession in a way that is ethical, justified. They further argue that journalism ethics stands even beyond the code of ethics, which we see today appended in the Media Council of Tanzania. So journalism ethics are now concerned with making sound moral decisions, according to Kasoma, 1983. It involves making sound moral decisions in a journalistic performance, etc., etc. So it assumes that the presence of morality in the first place, where morality refers to actions guided by generally acceptable human lives or values and responsibilities. So in conclusion, we find that in essence, ethics are not laws. Ethics are not laws. Laws are enforceable by the state agents. Because if a journalist, mind you that we have several laws, strict rules, and regulations that you have to abide. And these are legal binding. But in ethics, those are not legal binding. It's your will. It's your choice as a moral agent to decide which one is ethical and which one is bad. So therefore, ethics are commitments that individuals make as a result of their understanding and acceptance of the goodness or benefits of a certain behaviors or action. Now, as we're about to wind this lecture, as we've seen different, reactions, we've seen different definitions of ethics from different authors, we find that if code of ethics are unable to guide journalists to observe the so-called media ethics, then they are being rendered useless. We cannot have code of ethics, and yet media practitioners don't abide by them. We must have code of ethics which are strictly complied by all media stakeholders. After having said so, now let's go into a class exercise to students. I would like students to define ethics in their own words after we have discussed what is ethics, after having given you these examples of ethics. Now I want you to sit down in groups and define ethics in your own words. Compare and contrast ethical and unethical behaviors in your community. If you're living in a certain community, try to understand, after we have discussed this lecture, that what are the ethical and ethical behaviors that you have detected in that particular society. And try to list at least 4 ethical values that are deemed very important in your society or in your community that you live in. After having said so, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for your attention, and I believe that the lesson has been very interesting to you. And until next time when we meet in another lecture to discuss now the components of ethics and how ethics and the types of ethics that we have to abide as journalists. Thank you very much for your attention.